Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. It's Shay Ryan Douglas here from Earth Heroes TV, and I'm joined with Dennis O'Connor from Awakening in Health. We're having a conversation about the current climate of the world that we find ourselves in and what we need to do and know to move forward for our health and our longevity in our communities and for ourselves. We've just started talking about the excess death rates in 2023, and we've had a huge year, which we're kind of reviewing at this point coming into the Christmas festive season. A little bit of chaos out there on the streets, but fundamentally, I want to talk about, 3 years ago, what we went through. Most people, humans have this amnesia where we easily, quickly forget, and to our detriment at times, because it leads us to do sometimes miraculous things, sometimes really ignorant and stupid, naive things. And so I want to open the conversation, and I think it's really important for us to have these discussions because we need to look and learn from our recent history, our history since we've been alive, and the history before we've passed, because it seems our school systems don't necessarily teach us the so-called truth, which is a nuanced subject in its own mind. But Dennis, let's talk about 2 years ago when we were up in Cairns going through, granted we were in a very privileged position compared to most of the world, particularly Melbourne here in Australia, where these lockdown rules and restrictions were really laying heavy. And obviously your expertise as a clinician, particularly in mental health, I mean, we actually seen mental health problems increase over that time, as well as suicide, as well as not just the excess deaths from the symptoms, but what we just spoke about in the last series. So I really want to just let's go back in time 24 months, what that was like for humans on the earth and what we had to go through. Was that a fair and reasonable mandate from our authority figures, such as our governments, given the scope of the COVID-19 / influenza flu that was infiltrating the earth?
Yeah, it's always a tricky one, Shay, because if our psychologies and our mentalities are down where all that negativity lies, it actually affects us physically, it affects us negatively. But as you said, if you don't mention it, humans have this amnesia that happens, and we can't make decisions, or we can't maybe move forward. We can't actually see some of the traps, the pitfalls, the coercion, the tyranny that might come into the future. So we need to look at that stuff. We need to reflect on it. And as a great example I'm going to throw out is Ukraine. What happened to it? Now it's are you pro-Libya, Palestinian? Are you pro-Israeli? What happened to Ukraine? Is there a war still? Is that country still on the map even? Where's bad guy Putin being thrown around all the media? So the media, I think, is a huge part of the virus. And the way they were culpable in promoting these messages that were harmful across the board for humanity. I mean, I've never had much faith in the media anyway, the mainstream media, Channel 7, Channel 9, the Daily Mail, you name it. But I mean, they really plumbed to the depths of harming humanity. And just to, again, bring this idea to the fore of people's imagination, or people's memory, should I say. Remember when they had people sitting in chairs in concerts and not singing along because of some virus, that it would be okay to sit in a chair and not sing, but if you stood and danced with somebody, that you might catch a virus? Or how about walking to your chair in a restaurant, but you had to cover your mouth with a mask between the door and the chair, but as soon as you sat down, you're safe? Was there an exemption for midgets? I don't know. Were they safe, or did they have to sit down? The absurdity of these conditions that were put on us by so-called health experts really should have us looking at these people with, at the very least, mistrust, but really with derision. We should never trust these paid shills ever again. And to my mind, Shay, if we don't remember these things, it's going to come back.
I think that's a very good point that we have to highlight here is it encourages us to look at through the lens with a little bit more discernment, particularly in the choices that then we make and the people that we put our trust in. That trust is not just something that is granted automatically. It's something that you must prove to be trustworthy. And I remember about 3 years ago, there was a very small cohort of people who had somewhat seen this coming and spoke out against it. And initially they had already seen where this path leads to, the conditioning of the mask, the conditioning of the lockdowns, the compliance of the mandates. And then there was a suggestion of a surveyed digital identity system, a global central bank digital currency. All of these kind of the next succession of this pathway that we would be presented with these opportunities that, okay, granted it was pitched as convenient, easy, accessible. However, it left out one really important factor, that we would no longer have the rights or be in control of our own money or our own identity or our own medical exemptions or medical
autonomy,
passports, our own autonomy, our own sovereignty. And it's kind of, I remember at the time that seemed so outrageous and ridiculous that that would even be an option for us. But here we are today, where it is continuously, it's like this current of a river that is pushing us down that direction based on the last 3 years of choices that we all complied towards. And now it's like, okay, hang on a second. When we start to go down those rabbit holes and we realize, even in the banks, that most money these days is online and digital, more and more people, less and less people are using cash, and there's less available. And it seems, well, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah, Shay, it's all about convenience, okay? You need to have everything tapped into your phone. You need to have everything into your computer. Hey, listen, why don't you actually even have your computer and your phone integrated into yourself systematically, and maybe a lot of those neural impulses, those physiological responses controlled by AI to regulate your blood pressure, to regulate your heartbeat, to regulate your sexual function, to regulate your mood. Oh, hang on a second. What if, just what if, you had a nefarious character or a nefarious player who didn't like humanity, who could control everything, and they didn't like you and they wanted to cut you off because you refused a vaccine, or they wanted to cut you off because you had one too many mouthfuls of steak, because we know that cows farting is going to hurt the atmosphere, or the person who is down the line in that radius of control, in the council, for example, doesn't like the fact that your grass is greener than their grass in their front lawn, or the fact that you just looked the wrong way at a person in power, a politician, and somebody has control over that button.
I hear what you're saying.
I'm being a bit facetious here, Shay.
Absolutely. Well, and the thing is, though, as well, when you do what you're suggesting and you go down that path and you look at some of the possible situations not solutions, but the outcomes of following in these conditions and these suggestions for us, it does get pretty dark very quickly, and it presents a very dystopian future. I mean, you only have to look at China's social credit system to see what is ahead for us potentially in the West, which we've been living in this beautiful sense of freedom and liberty, even if it's in our own mindset. But that can also produce a lot of that lower energy fear, those deeper emotions of, oh my God, I don't want to go down that pathway. And actually, I'm pissed off, like, fuck the system, and I want this anarchy. And that is also a kind of lower energy, but it's kind of the big question that comes up is, how do we navigate these turbulent times, this volatile system that is on the edge? Because ultimately what it would require is the people coming together to revolt and have a revolution. But at the same time, that is very dangerous too. If suddenly all these systems and these foundations of all of this that we depend on for our food, for our water, for these bigger things, for our survival, if that suddenly came crumbling to the ground, that would also be chaotic and crazy, and we'd be stumbling around to find our way forward. So it's a very fragile moment in human history that we find ourselves in. And at the same time, we don't want to go down that path, do we? Because we've seen the end road and it doesn't look good for us.
Well, listen, everything's about nuances, and a good framework for me is this idea of archetypes. And for anybody who's listening into this, we kind of can blur the lines with archetypes. We have your teachers, we have your healers, we have our warriors, we have and your mother figures, your father figures, your king figures. So
Kings and queens.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about a revolution, or it doesn't have to be, again, the psyop that the media tells us about. A revolution doesn't have to be pitchforks and people standing in the street. Maybe some of our warriors want to do that. Maybe it could be effective. Maybe that's what's needed with these parasites, to pull them out of their lairs and to get them off the earth, okay? But there's other ways. We can have righteous indignation. We can have righteous ways of thinking that empower us to fight back. And those ways of thinking are something as simple as non-compliance. Everything is an offer. And this is what I love, the gift I've gotten from exploring common law in detail. This idea, and Tom Barnett, again, does a very good job of painting this picture about everything being an offer. And if we want to stay along what's called uniform commercial code rules, which are these kind of set of rules that govern people from a law point of view, we accept every offer, but we always accept it conditionally. So, for example, Shay, your car, I could offer you $500, and it's worth more than that, but you could actually, in order to offer this with condition, to accept this with conditions, could say, yes, Dennis, I accept. Where's your $500? But I accept it as long as I have your car and your house and your phone in return. How about that? So we're automatically operating from a positive level. So when we have these mandates, wearing a mask, who decided this? Who's going to accept liability if that mask does me harm because of all the little fibers that I'm breathing in that could trigger something like mesothelioma, which is a cancer that tiny particles can give you, or the raise in carbon dioxide when you're wearing that mask. Again, that acidotic carbon dioxide level can increase your risk of cancer. Who's accepting, like, I'll wear that mask, but I want to identify somebody who I can receive compensation from should I get sick, and that compensation is going to be very, very expensive. In fact, my life is worth $25 million at least. Where do I send the bill? So there are the idea, the framework to fight back is not necessarily that destructive MMA step, leaning on somebody's throat. There are so many different ways to fight back. Non-compliance, knowing your standing, empowering yourself is just as effective to fight.
That's powerful then, and that takes a certain level of education and knowledge, where we all know that the real power is in the knowledge to move forward. And I love that you've been so heavily involved in the common law group up in Cairns, and you're really starting to gather some momentum with this, and you've had some great guest speakers, the likes of Tom Barnett, who have joined you in some of the events happening up there, the Apocalypso I've been watching from down here, and I want to dive into that a little bit more. I love the fact that all these people are just like you and I, everyday ordinary people who are just voicing out and using the tools that are available to us to share our perspective on the world, to give people an insight into those deeper questions that encourage us to discover who we truly are and why we are actually here on this earth at this time. It seems critical when we're in this kind of precipice moment where we could go one of two ways fundamentally. And then the importance of getting this knowledge out to the people. And that's why we do these podcasts, because we want to empower people. We want to support people to realize what their potential really is. And so what was that like up in Cairns with the Common Law Group over the last 12 months and those these fun events that you've been a part of?
Yeah, it was good. There's a load of little things I can actually hear when you're talking there. But even meeting Tom was fantastic, and we again, it's about empowerment. And for example, when Tom ran for mayor in Byron Bay a couple of years back, and in the paper, the hit piece on him was just extraordinary. This raw meat eating freak who wants to do X, Y, and Z. And if you actually look at different literature, there is interesting evidence for just about every concept that Tom talks about, and we're actually quite aligned in relation to where we perceive health from. And I've actually investigated some of Tom's claims in relation to health from a mainstream health point of view, and what he talks about has a lot of merit, if not huge credibility. And then you meet Tom, and he's a diminutive kind of little fella, and even on the stage he said that everybody who sees him, that's the first thing they say. The reason I'm making that point is that that
he's little.
Yeah, listen, he's a normal, a relatively normal person who just took the fight to help humanity to the fore. And Shay, I know you from, you've done a few very interesting things with your movie project in the past, and you've met a few people. So I think you stepped out of you a lot earlier than some people, and I give you a lot of credit for that. But myself, I'm not some extraordinary person. I was a nurse by trade. I got fairly high up the ladder in nursing. But when we see something, when those blinds, the blinkers come off, I think everybody has to understand that they have that power to be part of, again, I'll use that word loosely, the fight for humanity. And it doesn't bloody matter what people think of you. It doesn't matter I've got my nose looks too big in this camera angle, or my voice sounds funny, or I don't know, I might have messed up and said something, or, I got drunk 2 weeks ago. I don't give a shit about that negativity, the ad hominem attack. I don't give a shit about it. And we all have to drop that. We've all got skeletons in our closet. We've all got secrets. But again, overall, are we good or bad people? And I think if we're taking this fight for humanity, we're in that good camp, and that's all that matters. So for people listening to that, bloody, get off the couch. Turn off this bloody thing now and do follow your dreams about trying to move forward to help humanity more.
Powerful conversation, Dennis. I think what you're really tapping into is a deeper esoteric or metaphysical concept of really letting go of this identity that we create for ourselves around our name, our job, our family, or where we grew up, and really stepping into this omnipotence, this ever-essence presence, or this unlimited potential, unlimited power that we actually have the ability to tap into with purely our awareness as a starting point. Know that that is within our capabilities to create the world that we desire to see from a more intelligent perspective that is boundless beyond the frail biological framework of our human being.
The fear traps us, Shay. The fear traps us. And listen, I absolutely. And I walked away from a very well-paying job about now 4.5 years ago, and that I was attached to that job. And listen, I could be a hell of a lot more financially comfortable if I'd stayed there. But I'm still getting looked after. I had enough abundance to catch a flight down here to see you. I'm going to be traveling soon. I've got my clothes are nice and new. I just got a haircut yesterday. So this fear I had when I stepped away, I had to put it out there that the universe was going to look after me, and it has. Doesn't mean to say I wasn't afraid, but we still stepped through. We still followed through with it. But again, just the power in letting go. You don't need that friggin' $5,000 couch or that huge screen or that leather jacket that you got from Oriton, 14 years ago, that's sitting in your closet that you've only worn once in 3 years. Let that shit go, relax, and step into your power, as you said.
Well, like you say, stepping into your power requires us to look at our life from multifaceted perspective rather than the single track blinkers that you referenced earlier. And in doing that, we really start to see that there is so much more to life than those material, physical elements that we find in our environment, and that invites us into a deeper journey into ourselves, a journey within ourselves to realize the abundance of the feelings, because now we are liberating those denser emotions of fear and shame and guilt and all of these judgments that we're ultimately putting on ourselves, but we project onto others. But we have to reclaim that for ourselves, and we can transcend that through recognizing that there is more to this life than just this consuming all the time. And then we step into this new version of ourselves, which is, like you said, producing information, sharing knowledge. Creator, exactly. And so I guess maybe we can touch on that in the next part of this series, because we're just going to return to a break very quickly. But what are you creating in the world, Dennis, particularly to inspire others to step into their infinite potential as a creator being? And so if you're just tuning in, I'm Shay Ryan Douglas from Earth Heroes TV. This is Dennis O'Connor from Awakening in Health, and we are back in the studio and we're taking a break.